In this video, we're going to start talking about fragments and about how to lay out more complicated user interfaces. So I'm going to start a new Android activity called Fragmented Meals. And this is going to be a version of my Meals app, except it's going to use fragments instead of having a static layout. And we'll start with API level 10 or above, and we'll start with a blank activity. There are a couple of fragment starters, but we're not going to use those. So I'll just go ahead and start with main activity and finish. So here's the standard Hello World app. Make this a little smaller. So let's go ahead and add a list to it. And I'm going to right-click on Java and create a new fragment, which is going to be a fragment list. And the object kind, I'm just going to leave as item for now. The class name, I'm going to make meal fragment. Make it meal list fragment. And I'm not going to include the factory methods or switch to grid view on large screens. And this is going to create several things for me. Mostly it will create this Java file. So here's a meal list fragment that extends ListFragment. And it's going to have a callback to the main activity. So basically when this fragment, which is a little piece of UI, gets added to the main view layout in my main activity, I'm going to get this onAttach method called. And this onAttach basically tracks the activity in a private variable called mListener. So we'll see more about that later. So I have an empty constructor. I have an onCreate method that gets called when the when the fragment gets created. And then this list adapter thing here with the dummy content and so on. So we're going to get rid of all of this. So I'm going to delete dummy content. And I'm going to delete this folder. And I'm going to write my own adapter. So basically, an adapter is a class that takes some sort of data, such as an array or a set of objects or whatever, and adapts that data structure to a view. So you can have a list view that has an adapter that has an array under it, or you can have a grid view that has an adapter that has maybe a database behind it, or a text file adapter, or whatever. So lots of different kinds of adapters that sort of serve as glue for taking the data and presenting it with an interface that these views know how to handle. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a new class for a meal item. So new Java class, and this is going to be a meal item. And it's going to be a pretty simple class. It's going to have a private string and name, and a private int and picture. So the name is going to be the type of meal, beef, chicken, or fish, and the picture is going to be a resource ID, which I'm going to use to display a picture. And then I need a constructor for the meal item, and it's going to take two arguments, a name and a picture. And all it's going to do is set the member variables to the values that were passed into the constructor. So since these are private, nobody outside of the class can access these. So I need to provide a method that outside classes can use to get access to the data. So I'm going to create string get name, which won't take any arguments, and it's just going to return the name property, and another one called get picture, which is just going to return the picture property. So to use this in an adapter, I also need to provide a toString method. So the toString method, it's going to call it on each item in my adapter, and whatever string this thing returns, that's the string that it's going to use in the list. So my toString method is going to return a string. Let's make all of these public. And I'm just going to have it return the name. It should be returning a string. Let me make all of these public. Okay. So now I have a meal item. Let me go back to my meal list fragment, and I'm going to create an adapter here. And let me go ahead and put it in a member variable so that I can access it from other code. So we'll be creating an array adapter of meal items called adapter. And in our onCreate method, we'll set adapter to, and then we basically want this kind of thing. So new array adapter of meal item. And then we need to provide some arguments. So we need the activity. And then this one is using the simple list item 1 layout. So this is how the items are going to appear in the list. I'm going to use the activated version. So android.r.layout.simple list item activated 1. And then I'm going to use the same text, text 1. And I'm not going to specify any initial items here. I'm going to add those myself. So now that I have an adapter, I can pass that in to setListAdapter. And now let's add a few items. So first I'm going to add home, and I need to get some resources here. So this is going to be the idea of a drawable, and right now I don't have any drawables in the app other than the icon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my meals project, and go to the drawables folder, and I'm going to use these images from before, except this flag is a little big, so I'm going to knock this one down first. So I'm going to edit this in GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program. And this is 2000 by 3800, so that's a really big image, and expanding it takes a lot of time and resources. So I'm going to scale the image, and I'm going to make it 500 wide by 950 tall. Scale it. This is not full size. If you want to see the full size version, so that's the full size version. Still pretty big, but okay. And then I'm going to overwrite flag.png. So now I have a smaller flag, and I'll discard these changes because I've already overwritten them. I'm going to copy all of those pictures and paste them into my drawable folder. And I'm going to put them in the main drawable. So home is going to be the ID of the flag. Now I have a little problem here. If I just type r.id dot flag r dot drawable dot flag I need to add a new meal item. There. So this part is creating a new meal item that has the name home and the drawable ID for the flag. And it creates that meal item and then adds it to the adapter. And then I'm going to do the same thing for beef, chicken, and fish. And then also here on my mListener on Fragment Interaction, I'm still referencing dummy content. So let me get rid of this. So this is going to be what I want to provide back to my main activity when the user clicks on something in the list. And for now, what I want to do is go to my mAdapter, and I want to get item at that position. So the position is going to be the position of the item in the list, and then that's going to be a meal item. And so this thing is going to pass a meal item to whatever on-fragment interaction method is defined in my main activity, which I haven't done yet, so I'm going to have to hook that up. So I'm getting this curly bracket because where the interface is defined, so an interface is a set of methods that that my listener is going to have to provide. Where this is defined, it's passing in a string, but I'm actually passing in a meal item. So now this is working. So now when the user clicks on the list, it's going to pass a meal item to the main activity's on fragment interaction listener. And so let's go ahead and do that on the other side. So now in my main activity, what I want to do is add that this activity implements the interface. So implements meal list fragment dot on fragment interaction listener. So by saying that this class implements this, that allows me to link up the main activity with the fragment. And I have a curly under here because I haven't implemented all the methods that are specified in the interface. So I'm going to implement the methods, and I get automatically on fragment interaction, which takes a meal item ID. And just for testing purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a log tag, public final static string log tag equals main activity. And then when the user clicks on a list item, I'm going to write a debug message coming from my main activity that says name colon plus id dot get name picture id plus id dot get picture. So just write a message to the log, Alt plus Enter. So this will write a message to the log whenever the user clicks on an item. Now going back to my meal list fragment, I'm going to open this import, and I still have a reference to the dummy class, so I'm going to delete that to clear the error. And I have almost everything I need to test. The one thing I don't have is I'm not actually creating this fragment and adding it to my UI. So let's go ahead and do that first. So first I have to have a place to put it. And in my activity main, I just right now have the text hello world in a relative layout. Let's turn this into a linear layout. And we're going to specify the orientation is horizontal. And then right now I'm just going to have a single frame layout where I can add my fragment. So we'll use wrap content, and for height I'm going to match the parent. And this is a singleton tag, so I can just go ahead and say /close. Now I need to have an ID on here so that I can add my fragment to it. So this is going to be called ListFragment. And let's just start with this. So in my main activity, in the onCreate method, so now in my main activity, what I want to do is get the Fragment Manager using get support Fragment Manager. And now I've got the wrong import here, unfortunately, so let's look at our imports. So this was the wrong one. Let's get rid of that. And Alt plus Enter. Now I have the right one. And that's because I'm targeting minimum SDK level 10. And then what I want to do is get a transaction. So I want begin transaction. And once again, I want the app v4 fragment transaction. So let me go ahead and fix this one as well, support.v4. Okay, so now I have a transaction. And what I'm going to do is if I'm starting the program from scratch, I'm going to add my list fragment to the main layout. If I'm restarting, then I'm already going to have my list item in the main layout as part of the restart, as part of what Android does when it restarts an app. So I'm going to put all of this inside of if saved instance state is equal to null. Then I'm going to do this stuff. And I'm going to say transaction.add, and then I specify where I want to add it, which is going to be r.id.listFragment, and also what I want to add, which is a new meal list fragment. So now I've added my meal list fragment to the right place in my layout. Then I want to commit those changes. And that should be enough to show my list. So let's go ahead and try it. Try it on API level 21, the large screen. Okay, so here's my list, and I can click and click. And I'm not getting any, oh yes, when you click, it took a while for the log to catch up, but when you click, you'll see that it adds a little item here. So if I click home, beef, chicken, and fish. So that means that my fragment is communicating with the main activity correctly. So you'll notice that when I click on these, other than showing the text in the log, it doesn't do anything to indicate which one is selected. So let's make that look a little better. And there's an example of how to do this in the Fragment Basics demo. So I have a copy of that in my Android projects folder. It's downloaded from the developer tutorial on Fragments. And I'm going to go to the source main Java com example Android Fragments. And we want the headline fragments. And I'm going to edit with Notepad. Make this a little smaller. So there's basically 2 lines of code that we have to add, but we do have to create an onStart method. So the first part is this onStart, and what it's doing is setting the choice mode for the list to be choice mode single. And we have to do this in code because we don't actually have a layout XML file for this particular fragment. Since we created a list fragment, that's just a view, and so it doesn't have its own XML file. We don't need this part here, but we do need that part. So I'm going to copy this line of code, and I'm going to create a onStart method for my neolist fragment. So let's go ahead and put it here. I'm going to override the public void onStart, and I'm just going to paste in that line of code. And then the other thing we need to do is down here where the user actually clicks on an item, it sets getListView.setItemCheckedPosition. So the first thing tells the view that it only has one thing selected at a time, and the second thing sets which item is checked. And so I'm going to put that in my onListItemClick, and I'm always going to do that whether there's a listener or not. And I think that should be it. So let's try it now. Oh, I have a little problem here. So let's see what kind of error we got. Oh, I forgot to call super.onStart. So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's try it. Okay, so home. Great. So it's highlighting the one that's selected. So that about wraps up our list view for now. In the next video, we'll take a look at adding the main view.